Pretty much anytime that I go to record a podcast episode, someone is either mowing my lawn or something is happening outside of my house that is like extremely loud. So, as of right now, my husband is using the leaf blower to blow off the porch. And earlier, when I was recording a different podcast episode, my brother was weed whacking our lawn. So, anyways, if you hear that in the background, that is just the reality of things, and I am running with it. If you ever hear kids that are like running around and whatnot, like that is life, and that is really truly what I want you to feel and what I want you to hear through my podcast episodes and just through my brand in general is like I'm running this while also living a very full life. And the reality is that I don't always have the perfect podcast audio and things happen. And that's just, we just roll with it. That is just business. But all this to be said, this episode is not about that. This episode is about launching, and launching has been top of mind these last few weeks because I've been in a launch for Our Rich, which is I'm launching now round 2 of Our Rich, and I also have several of my scalability students that are launching offers, and so there's just been a lot of conversations around launches, and I wanted to talk about one in particular because it was such a good reminder of the reality of launching and just honestly selling an offer in general. I got a direct message from one of my scalability students, and I sometimes will check in with my scalability students in direct messages, sometimes in Telegram. Anyways, I'm just like keeping up with them, what's on Instagram. I will look at their content. I'm always looking at their stories. I follow them on there, and that's really intentional. I want to be in their businesses. I don't want it to just be only when they are asking for help am I like reaching out. Like I'm constantly watching their stories. Just one of the other days, I was following one of my new students, and my new student was like, "Oh my gosh, I feel so much pressure knowing that you're following me." And I was watching the students' Instagram stories and giving feedback, and she was saying like how helpful it was. So, anyways, I am constantly watching my students. And so one of my students direct messaged me and he said that there were 2 days left in his pre-sale and before like the price was to increase into early bird pricing, and there were 4 people who had joined during pre-sale, and again he had 2 days left, and he was like, I want to get more people inside. And I had been watching his content, I had been watching his Instagram stories, and I was like, I didn't even know that you were in pre-sale. And so I went to his Instagram feed and I did some searching, and I was like, maybe I missed a few posts. And then I went to his Instagram stories too, and I was like, maybe I just wasn't looking hard enough. And with his Instagram stories, it was definitely buried. And I told him, I was like, no, you're totally burying the fact that this is in pre-sale. And pretty much all the urgency of, a launch was being buried behind the pitch, which the pitch itself was good, right? He was focused on the payoff, and it was very clear of like the offer, but again it was just like buried after people had read paragraph and paragraph and paragraph, and it's like people are not going to do that, right? You need the fact that you are in a launch and the urgency of a launch to be front and center in your marketing when you're in a launch. And then on his Instagram feed content, same exact concept. I would go through and it was only until the very last slide of his carousel post, or it'd be buried at the very end of a really long caption. And I told him, I was like, I'm watching your content. Like, I've seen your content during this entire launch, and I didn't even realize that you were in pre-sale. You need to be posting more. You need to be making this more clear that you are in pre-sale. And I remember when I was in a launch for Plug and Get Paid a few years ago when it first came out, and I felt like I had beat the freaking crap out of selling that offer. And there was nothing else that I had to say. I was like, I have sold this every single day. I've done it via email. I've done it on my Instagram feed. I've done it in stories. And that was probably the launch that I've done the absolute most up until that point, where I'd done the most in terms of marketing. And I sat down one day. I was sitting at my desk. I remember this moment so vividly. I remember sitting down and I was like, I don't think that I should sell this anymore. Like, not like long term sell this, but I was like, I think I'm done with this launch. I was like, I think everyone who would have joined during this launch is going to have joined, like they've already heard about it. I've already beat the crap out of marketing and selling this offer. And no joke, I will go into my direct messages, and there was a direct message that was a reply from one of my stories, and the story had been talking about Plug and Get Paid but I didn't really give a lot of context around plug and get paid because I was marketing as if everyone knew what plug and get paid was, which that in it of itself is a lesson. You should never market your offer in that way. But they had replied to that. This girl had replied to that story, and she said, what is this offer?" And I laughed out loud because I, moments prior, had been thinking, everyone knows about this offer. There's no one else in my Instagram following, on my email list, who doesn't know about this offer. And then I get this direct message, and it was just such a good reminder that you have to sell the crap out of it. And the second that you get bored of it is the second that people are just hearing about it. And I love this saying from Macy McNeely. She runs the Sales Girl official Instagram account, and she says, "Don't get bored with it, get paid with it." Which, for me, basically the way that I've interpreted this is always finding ways to make selling fun for myself, but also knowing too that if I get bored with it, usually there again, it's just people are hearing about it for the very first time. And that has just been such a great reminder and a good mindset for me as I go into any launch, where I have to just keep selling it and keep selling it until the very end of that launch. But that concept also applies when you're selling an evergreen offer too, outside of a launch. If you feel like you've talked about this so many times, good. Continue talking about it because people are just hearing about it. And I don't say that to frustrate you, but to really inspire you, because that is the reality of marketing. That is the reality of showing up on social media, especially when we're talking about Instagram, and not everyone sees your content on Instagram. Okay, yeah, you posted on your feed 15 times about, this offer. Well, how many people saw all 15 of those posts? I would say no one. No one saw all 15 of those posts. You're lucky if, a good majority of people saw 3 or 4 of those posts. And so just having that repetition is so important, and not just repetition, but also volume during a launch. A launch really is, it's a heavy volume period because you want people to know about the urgency, and the only way people are going to know about the urgency of the price increase or the spots or doors closing or whatever that mechanism is that you're leveraging in terms of urgency, the only way they're going to know about that is by you posting about a lot and talking about it a lot, and in a lot of different ways. So that is my little tidbit that I leave you with, is don't get bored with it, get paid with it.